Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I interview an awesome Black woman every single day for the month of February. And today, I am delighted to have Sheila Jackson, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Jackson McCrea Whiskey. It's a brand new startup whiskey, and it's absolutely heavenly. I didn't know I would like brown liquor so much, but I do. Probably because Black women found it. So I can't wait for y'all to take a listen and hear her amazing story. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, happy to be here.
I'm so delighted to have you on the show. As you know, my mom's name is Sheila, so all Sheilas in my book are awesome.
Oh, I didn't
So,
know that. I didn't realize that. Yes.
so I have a special place in my heart for all Black women named Sheila. I'm delighted to have you on the show. First question's always same, answer's always awesome. I'm sure yours will be no different. So, Sheila, what was your first job?
Oh gosh.
Whatever you
My
think.
very first job is, I guess it's a little political. There's probably a lot of things that I've done. But my first job, I worked at Planned Parenthood.
Oh, wow, cool.
When I was in high school, I got a job. I've always been very focused on, women's wellness, women's issues, and I became fascinated with Planned Parenthood and the concept that I could go there and, learn things about my body and have support in taking care of my body. And I had an opportunity when they came to my school. I met the lady that managed one of the locations, and they needed somebody part-time, and I was excited to take the job because, growing up, when I started my period, my mother gave me a book, and that was it.
A book. So not even pads. She gave you a book because that's
Yeah,
helpful. The book's
yeah,
going to be super helpful when you're bleeding. Okay, great.
yeah.
Like, so what did you do when you were in high school working there?
I helped people who were coming in, who were in recovery after having an abortion.
Oh, wow.
That's why I said it was political, but I, helped women, brought them, helped them rehydrate and get their strength back up, bring orange juice and that sort of thing when they were coming out of recovery, and make sure they were okay or weren't exhibiting certain symptoms, that sort of thing. That was
Wow.
my very first job. Isn't that fascinating?
See,
Nobody's
look at
ever
that.
asked me that, but yeah.
See, like I said, it's like making sure women are well taken care of. I kind of think
Hmm.
there's a correlation to where you are right now. Just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, it is.
Which is always, is part of the reason I ask the question because it's always interesting to me where folks go in their history when I ask this question. And I would say about 98% of the time, whatever that first job that comes to mind for them always correlates in some way, shape, or form to where they are and what they're doing in their particular moment in their life when we're chatting. So it is really interesting how it harkens back to where you were and sort of brings you also forward to present day. So it's always a delight to hear where folks are where it started and how it's going.
Yeah.
All right, so we go from working in Planned Parenthood to where you are now. I know this has been a fascinating career journey, so share that with the group.
It has been fascinating. I originally started out as a psychotherapist, and I worked with women. My whole practice was centered around women and women's issues. I did all kinds of workshops. I had a radio talk show called Girl Talk LA back in the day, and but I always wanted to. I was always a writer first and foremost, and I started writing a lot of self-help articles. I wrote for different magazines, newsletters. I actually, once I decided to leave counseling to write full time, I started writing for Essence Magazine and ended up moving to the Caribbean for a while where I was a newspaper columnist in Barbados. I was the only female Sunday columnist for Nation News in Barbados for about 5 years.
Wow.
And during that time, I started just exploring writing. I've always just wanted to explore every form of writing, different formats. Had an opportunity to write two history books, one around, there were collections of biographies for Scholastic. One was around the Civil Rights Movement, and the other one was about the Harlem Renaissance. And I found so many amazing stories in doing the research for those books that I was determined when I came back to California to take a screenwriting class and learn how to write scripts, because I was like, why would no one would ever have to make up another thing? There's so many fascinating stories in our history to tell, and I wanted to be able to write in other formats. So came back to California, took a screenwriting class, started writing, and then I was like, I've never been on set. I'm a writer that's never been on set. So I started volunteering for women in film, they were doing commercials for nonprofits. And somebody said, Sheila should be the location manager for this, and Sheila should be the associate producer. And then I was a producer, and I fell in love with that process. I started writing commercials and producing commercials, and started my own production company doing that very thing, and started working a lot in brand storytelling and a lot of capacity building with clients who needed, that kind of media. So it's been a wild ride. So I've gone from commercials into the documentary space, and now I work a lot with in development, and really doing a lot of research and development, and providing more of a historical backdrop to a lot of stories. I get to work on a lot of pretty cool films, finding out research from everything from researching a historical era to researching a particular part of the world, and then just working with people who have projects that they want to develop and figure out where the story is at. So that's the one side of my career. The other side is Jackson McCrea, which is just wanting to have a product, wanting to start a brand, and I knew I wanted to do something that I could really love, a product that I would really love, and I knew that would
Mm-hmm.
be either wine or whiskey. And I explored the wine world, and I still do, because I'm a big wine geek, and I'm actually on the kind of an advisory board for La Cienega Vineyard, which is a vineyard out of Sonoma. And that experience actually sent me to say I wanted to do whiskey, just because of the difficulties and unpredictability with the weather, the fires, the early frost, you lose part of your crop. There's a lot of things that go into creating a wine, especially if you want to be on the vineyard side of things. So started exploring whiskey, and right around COVID, it was wine and spirit sales went up 65%. And I was like, okay, there's something to this. There's something going on. It's like recession proof and now COVID proof, pandemic proof as well, this industry. And I, sat down with a friend during COVID with Natasha, and we just started talking about whiskey one day. We had been talking a lot about wine, and we met, and she was having a old fashioned. And I was like, I didn't even know you liked whiskey. How did I not know? We just started talking about it, and I said, spirit sales are up 65% right now. This is would be a great business to go into. And that was the beginnings of our conversations around Jackson McCrea. And we knew, creating this whiskey as two women, that we would be changing the culture around whiskey, because women have been removed from the narrative around whiskey, and they have been just had this cloak of invisibility as consumers, because women drink whiskey, but they're not part of the narrative, they're not part of the advertising, they're not being engaged as consumers. So we knew we wanted to do something really different and really special with our brand, and really acknowledge women in that space.
Oh my God. Sheila, so you've lived 15 lives.
Yes, I
You've got,
have. And 10 in
damn.
between. It's been a
Jesus, I don't even
long.
know where. I mean, I have so many questions, and I know I have a limited window of time. Okay, I'm gonna back up the truck. How did you end up in Barbados, and like, what was that like, being the only woman who was the main reporter? Like, what?
It was it was great. It was funny, when I was growing up as a kid, I used to watch these old movies, black and white movies, and women would go somewhere and they'd say, "Send for my things," and I always wanted to do that. but I
Very Diane
always
Carroll of
wanted
you.
to. I wanted to have that moment, and it was funny because I was my second husband and we used to travel a lot to the Caribbean, and I said I want to live in the Caribbean. I'm a big beach bum. I love the ocean, and I wanted to have an opportunity to live abroad, and I wanted to have an opportunity to live somewhere. Barbados is a place that's 98%, folks of African descent. 98% literacy rate. People are it's an amazing island for a lot of different reasons. But we traveled to different islands over about 3 or 4 years. We went to a different island maybe every 6 months. And I had a travel agent that was like, I think you were going to love Barbados. And I went and I literally fell in love with it. And I was there, and it was when I got I think my second Essence article while I lived in Barbados. And I wrote the piece about my experience in Barbados, and it was called Uncle Sam Syndrome. And it was about my feeling of discomfort when I went into a fish shop, buying fish cakes at midnight. And I was the only woman in the shop. I looked around, I was in this sea of men, and I was like, what's wrong with me that I'm uncomfortable? And I wrote about that experience and how Barbados just opened me up to see, kind of how my experience as an African American had, kind of, there was a little trauma around that I had to sort out, being in Barbados. And the article came out, well, it got it early, it released early to people in the industry. And somehow the managing editor of the Nation News saw the article because the senior editor at Essence was from Barbados, and I know this is probably what happened, she sent the article to Roxanne, who was the managing editor of Nation News. And I literally opened up the newspaper one day, and there was an article, I still have a copy of it. It said, "Where is Sheila Jackson Hardy?" And she proceeded to write an article about the piece I wrote about my experience in Barbados that was in Essence. And she, at the end of it, she was like, if you read this, call me. And I called her. She took me out to dinner, and she invited me to be a columnist for the Sunday paper. She liked my voice. And that was the beginning of me really kind of discovering my voice as a writer. And because it was really more observational, personal essay style writing, which is something I really have come to love. But I really found my voice, as a young woman. I was a lot younger than as a young woman coming into my own. It was an amazing experience.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And so flipping it now to starting the whiskey brand. So, jokingly made the joke at the beginning of the episode, like, I'm not really a big brown liquor fan, but what y'all are doing with Jackson McCrea is tasty. So I'm guessing that you all had some interesting conversations and encounters as you were Black women starting a whiskey brand in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, it was funny because we're both, Natasha and I are both Geminis,
Oh,
and
that explains a lot of this
we
right
have a
now.
reputation.
As a Pisces, I fully understand.
Yes, we have a reputation, and we do uphold it, I think, from you just hearing my story. So people are like, what are they doing now? Our friends on both sides, what's she doing now? And we just started meeting once a week. We used to meet once a week, and then it became twice a week. And then we decided to go through this program. Had this founder class that we took through Founder, Foundr. It's a fantastic platform online, and it was about starting a brand and your brand strategy and just all of those initial steps of visioning, your positioning in the market, all of that. And we started doing that. That's where we began with the brand, and was just the whole strategy and story around it, and the demographic we were going after. And we went from that to looking for the distiller, and we wanted to, and we found out just while we were doing the research they were saying that women are responsible for the recent boom in whiskey sales, the increase of women drinking whiskey. And I'm like, are they even counting women? Because there's not a lot of research on women. There's just this one book by this one guy that researched women, Fred Minnick, and he found that women prefer more complex whiskeys, more nuanced flavors. Our olfactory bulbs are 43 times the size of men's. So that contributes to our different experience of spirits and whiskey in particular. So we decided to do a women in whiskey survey and ask women what they like, because there just wasn't there was a little information, but not a lot. And when we saw the kind of flavor notes that women liked, we kind of got with our kind of mad scientist distillers to figure out how we could create those flavor notes. Because whiskey isn't like, making a cake and you decide you're going to add certain things. You're really using the wood barrel, the kind of barrel you use, and different things like that to impart the flavor. So women wanted something with smoke, caramel, spice, something really rich. And the one thing that came through was they wanted something they could sit and eat that wouldn't have that heavy burn or harsh burn. So what we did is I'm originally from Tennessee, and I love my Tennessee whiskey. It goes through that Lincoln County process, that charcoal maple filtering, and that gives it that special flavor that differentiates it from Kentucky whiskey. So we sourced a 5-year-old rye from Tennessee, and we use rye because rye is spicy. It's the spicier of the whiskeys. And we brought it to California wine country, where it rests in French oak Syrah barrels. And we use the French oak because French oak has a tighter grain than American oak. And that tighter grain is what smooths out the texture and mouthfeel and everything of the whiskey. So that makes it so it's more sippable, and it doesn't have that harshness to it and that harsh bite. And French oak also imparts a little smoke and a little bit of caramel. So that's how we were able to, and we used Syrah barrels because Syrah has a lot of depth as a, red wine, but it also has a little pepperiness to it. So that adds a little color to it also, because you'll notice Jackson McCrea has a slightly reddish hue to it. And I think that it's, picked up a little of that from the Syrah barrel. So we really created something, and it was interesting because we were amazed at the end that all the flavor notes that we wanted really, really, came out in the final product. So we've been really excited about it, and the responses we've been getting from people who tried it is that it's really smooth, and that we want it to be something that really awakens the senses. As soon as you pull that glass, anywhere near your nose, you're just going to be like, aromatic explosion. So it came out really well. We're excited about it.
Amazing. And I swear I could listen to you explain all the aromatics and reasons why this is amazing and why it's got that more reddish hue all day long. Because I was like enraptured by that. I was like, oh, this just sounds like reading a romance novel or something. Like, damn, all right, bet. Like, I hope that those who are listening are like, I need to try this. Because that description alone sort of, it's what I always say about the story. Like, if you can just tell the story as to why, it's awesome. You will pull people in immeasurable ways. And I think this is another awesome way to do that, where you just broke down in beautiful terms how you all are different, why you all are different, and why you have to drink this immediately. So
yeah, and men love it too. We made this unapologetically with women in mind because they've been overlooked in the narrative. But it's a whiskey for everyone that everyone can enjoy, and our men are loving it too.
And so, looking back on all the things that you've done, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Sheila?
Probably the same thing I'm telling myself now, which is to slow down. It's I think patience is something that I've been always cultivating in my life. And I think I would tell 18-year-old Sheila, trust the process of life and to trust my intuition, and that I don't have to always know how things are going to unfold. It's good to have a plan. It's good to have your own how you plan to get from, you know, plan A, point A to point B and so forth. But you always have to be open to all the things that you don't know, because that's where so much of the sweetness of life is. It's in those everyday kind of things that open up and take you on a journey that you never imagined that you would be on. And it's all the ways that things can still manifest and happen and be even better than what you planned originally. So I think it's just about patience and openness and just trusting the process of life.
Listen, honestly, just trust the process, and it'll all work out. You'll figure it
Yeah.
out. Come hell or high water, you'll figure it out. Um, it's interesting because obviously managing a startup, especially as Black women who are not in their 20s, obviously probably had some challenges. Also, you were doing this in the middle of a pandemic. So talk to me about time you had a challenge where you're like, there's no way we're figuring it out, and then you did.
First of all, we never say there's no way. We just take a deep breath and go, okay, we're gonna do this no matter what. So because it's been it's been a miraculous journey, I will say, especially the last year and a half. Um, you know, finances are tough to get. We started this literally bootstrapping and each throwing in a very little bit of our own money, doing a crowdfunding campaign, then getting into Techstars, which they made an initial investment that helped us get into production, and then running out of runway and just being creative about how we generate the money to keep going. I think that for both of us, when things get tough or things look impossible, it's a challenge to be more creative and a challenge to just open our minds, about what can we do, what can we move forward, and just keep going.
So it's full steam ahead no matter what. Come hell or high
Yeah,
water.
yeah, yeah. That has been our motto. It's no matter what, full steam ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament. Well, obviously, and I think it's also and I really appreciate that you guys are founders over 40.
Yeah.
And I think that also, the wisdom of your experience comes in very handy at this juncture because y'all grown and
Yeah.
y'all and you've seen some interesting times already. So you're like, oh, you want me to start a business? Bet, I got you. Versus like I haven't seen the world. I haven't seen the world respond to when I try and do something. So because you've had that wealth of experience, it makes you better and makes you stronger founders. I'm sure you noticed that when you were with all the other folks at Techstars.
Yeah, because we were old. We were among the oldest there. There were maybe one or two other people that were in our age bracket, but most of the folks were, 20s, 30s. And it's such an interesting space because Natasha and I have both. I'm a career entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. Natasha, 20 years. And there is a difference between being an entrepreneur and being a CEO. And once I think we finally got to a point where we've learned that we don't have to wear all the hats, we don't have to do everything. But being in this founder space with a startup, I feel like we took a couple of steps back into that space where we're doing everything. But it's only temporary, but it's exhausting too. Because we're going back. I feel like we're going backwards for a minute, but we have to do everything and wear all these hats so we understand what needs to be done so we can hire great people and we can build the right team, right? So, we are kind of in that zone again of doing a little more than we typically would do, but also the more you do and the older you get too, self-care becomes even more important, which is why that's part of our social impact is around, women and wholeness. And we said we want to just launch a self-care revolution along with Jackson McCrea because, women work hard. We're running companies, building families, running teams. And, we want women to know that the more we do, the more we have to take care of ourselves. Self-care is not selfish. And that's a piece of what, that's part of what Natasha does is, helping people with self-care plans and that sort of thing in her life coaching practice. But that has been a challenge for me, and I know it's a challenge for a lot of women out there. And that's one of the things that has been a challenge in being, a CEO at this stage of life is building in that, take time to really nurture yourself and be, I hate to use the term balance, but for lack of a better term, to have more balance.
I love how you just beautifully segued into my next question. Spoken like someone who's clearly listening to the podcast. So my next question obviously is, hey Sheila, what do you do for your self-care?
I meditate. The one thing that I have been consistent on, I meditate and journal. That's the first thing I do. I do a lot of yoga. That makes all the difference in the world with my body. And when I can, I get to the beach and I love to hike. And I was doing a better job, just not over the last month or so, not this year, but I've been getting back into swimming at the gym and just making sure I go to the gym so I get a chance to get in the steam room, get in the jacuzzi, and have that little pampering moment. So that's been something I've been bringing back into my weeks.
I love it. And you know what it is? You said something that's so very important, especially for Black women. Self-care is not selfish.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
stop
so
it, y'all.
tough.
Like,
That's such a tough one, and it's such a radical idea for so many of us, you know. And if you
it's
have kids, that's a whole nother level because you're feeling guilty and feeling
right,
bad, or you don't
right.
have, that mother guilt is lethal. So,
Yeah, one day that will be mine. That will be another thing added to my list. Things to
yeah,
but yeah, I think it's just so important. And I love that and I also love that it's such a variety, like swimming to the gym to meditation. Like it's free Black woman experiences, which I adore and want more of us to learn it. Like that can be so many different things.
yes, absolutely. And I want to bring travel back into it, but travel for leisure, not for work, but really travel for leisure is something I would love to bring back into my life this year because I love to travel and I haven't as much in the last decade as I would like to.
Oh, right there with you, my friend. It's like I travel a lot, but Lord, traveling for fun, not as
Yeah,
much
that's
fun.
different.
Different. Not as much as I would like. But we find our way, and you will find your way to do that again, because you will figure it out. I have full faith in you, Sheila.
Yes, it's coming.
It's absolutely coming. And so, last question for you. Do you have a give and or ask of the audience?
Hmm. I think my ask of the audience is, especially for women out there, is to make sure you have a self-care plan and to create space to love up on yourself. And of course, I want everybody to try Jackson McCrea whiskey. I think that, there are ways to drink in good health and to drink in moderation. And, we really work to create something that, the one thing we're doing with Jackson McCrea is we want people not only to have it in a cocktail or sip it neat, but we have really worked to create whiskey infused cuisine, and we collaborate with chefs to create recipes because we're both really foodies. So we really wanted to bring that into the Jackson McCrea experience also as a whiskey infused cuisine. So if you check out jacksonmccreawhiskey.com, follow us on Instagram, or subscribe to receive our little very brief newsletters, because we know people are busy. So we always have just one little thing in there that you can, check out a recipe or get a little whiskey education. Um, we'd love to share those recipes for whiskey infused cuisine and cocktails with you.
Amazing. I have had whiskey infused food before. It is dangerous. Like, oh, these wings are delicious. Oh my. Whoa. Like, I think that's a brilliant idea, and I love the approach of, like, again, thinking about it not just in the cocktails or neat, but in the food. Again, innovating about ways you can experience it. And I know that you guys are rapidly expanding states, and folks can. So we're going to direct people to your website to find out where they can get your amazing whiskey shipped to their door.
Yes, yes. We're in
'Cause
about 42 states where you can buy via e-commerce and just order it through our website. And if you're in California, we're starting to expand into different stores, wine shops, and restaurants and that sort of thing now. So we're doing the groundwork for that right now. So if you want it in your area, always go where you shop and just ask for it.
bingo. See, not that complicated.
Mhm.
Sheila, you were such a delight, and just such a wealth of wonderful wisdom. And I am so glad we're able to have you on 29 Days of Magic this year.
Thank you for having me.
This is awesome. And so we're going to put all the details in the show notes, but you can find out where you can get Jackson McCrea whiskey. As I said, it is delicious. Even if you're not a typical quote unquote brown liquor drinker, you will enjoy it. It is refreshing, it is smooth, and it's something you deserve to treat yourself with.
Exactly.
So go for it. And that is our show.